Well, good afternoon, and welcome to the University of Tulsa College of Law. I am Janet Levitt, the interim dean here at the College of Law, and it is my distinct pleasure to welcome all of you, members of the community and faculty and administration and students. Welcome here for today's discussion. We are very pleased to host Sam Donaldson for his appearance on campus today, and the College of Law is also honored to have hosted many distinguished speakers this year, including NPR's Nina Totenberg and Justice Richard Goldstone of the South African Constitutional Court. We are also honored to share with you that Aubrey McClendon, the CEO of Chesapeake Energy, will join us for the inaugural installment of the Chesapeake Lecture Series on April 14th. Our speaker today continues our tradition of bringing to campus public figures who share their unique insights with the Tulsa community. Mr. Donaldson is in town to serve as the keynote speaker for a banquet to benefit the Woodrow Wilson International Center for Scholars, an organization that I know is quite dear to his heart. TU law professor Robert Budkin is chairing tonight's event, and I extend my thanks to Professor Budkin, my predecessor and my dear friend, for his work in helping to bring Mr. Donaldson to TU today. It is now my pleasure to invite to the podium TU Provost Roger Blaze to introduce our speaker.
Thank you very much, Janet, and thank you, Mr. Donaldson, for taking time from your schedule to visit us here at TU today. I also bring greetings from President Stedman Upham, who has a long-scheduled Board of Trustees meeting going on right now and is therefore unable to be here today. We're thrilled that you're here to share your experiences with our students, our faculty, and members of the community. We also extend our thanks to the Woodrow Wilson International Center for Scholars for bringing Mr. Donaldson to Tulsa for this appearance. Mr. Donaldson currently serves as president of the Wilson Council, which is the private sector advisory group supporting the center's initiatives. He will be sharing with us more about this exciting work later, done by the Wilson Center. During his 37-year career with ABC News, Mr. Donaldson has enjoyed front-row access to some of the world's most significant news stories. He's perhaps best known for his presidential coverage, including his direct and persistent questioning of senior government officials. He's served 2 appointments as the network's chief White House correspondent, covering Presidents Carter, Reagan, and Clinton. His unflinching approach may best be summed up in the title of his memoir, Hold On, Mr. President, which provided a behind-the-scenes look at his reporting career. He currently is a regular panelist on ABC's This Week with George Stephanopoulos. He previously co-anchored such shows as Primetime Live and This Week with Sam Donaldson and Cokie Roberts. And on a related note, I invite you all to join us on April 17th as TU hosts Cokie Roberts for the final installment of this year's Presidential Lecture Series, sponsored by the Darcy O'Brien Endowed Chair. During this presidential election year, we're fortunate to have Mr. Donaldson share with us his first-person accounts of his time covering the White House and presidential campaigns. Please join me in welcoming Sam Donaldson.
Thank you, Provost Blaze. Thank you very much. And I said you can say anything you want about me, but remember I have the last word. I saw nothing objectionable. Thank you for that introduction. I'm delighted to be here among lawyers and would-be lawyers, as well as other people I know. I thought when I was very young I would like to be a lawyer. But what I've done is okay, as long as I could talk. You see, that's the only, I couldn't lay a straight line of bricks. I don't know how to do much of anything else. But talking is something lawyers do. But then again, they have to think, don't they? And that's the problem. Well, for some of us. As I'll tell you in a few minutes, I've been screamingly wrong so far about the election year. My predictions, maybe some of them will come true. Some of them have already not come true, and the others are hanging in the balance. But I know what lawyers are about. I mean, I know what Shakespeare meant when he said, kill all the lawyers, so the bad guys could get in if you kill all the lawyers. Otherwise, you lawyers will keep the bad guys out. And when I was in college, I read a great book by a guy named Louis Neiser. Perhaps you've heard of him. You weren't alive, most of you, when he was practicing law in New York City, but he wrote a book called My Life in Court, and one chapter particularly. He defended a journalist named Quentin Reynolds, who had a pretty good career and was a journalist in World War II and a good reputation, against a libel that was delivered by a man named Westbrook Pegler. Now, Westbrook Pegler was the premier political columnist of the day. Think my friend George F. Will Incorporated and Robert Novak, Roll, Charles Cottrell, put them all in one. That was Westbrook Pegler. Although the three that I've mentioned today, I think, are sane, and some people thought he wasn't. But he had accused Reynolds in his column of being a communist sympathizer, fellow traveler, carrying the communist line to subvert the good people of the United States. And, of course, this was at a time when Joe McCarthy was just feeling his oats, and we were in what is known today as the Red Square. Or Red Scare, I guess it was really. I've been in Red Square with Ronald Wilson Reagan and other people, and let me tell you, it's an awesome place to go. In any event, as the story unfolds, Quentin Reynolds' lawyer, Louis Nizer, put Westbrook Pegler on the stand, who told the jury how he was an expert in communist propaganda. He knew it when he saw it and all of that. So at some point, Nizer said, well, Mr. Reynolds, what about this? Yada, 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 yada. Would you say that's subversive? Well, of course, said Reynolds. I mean, that is clearly communist propaganda, artfully done, but meant to subvert people who read it to communism. And when Quentin Reynolds wrote that, he knew what he was doing. Oh, no, Mr. Pegler, you wrote that. In a 1939 column. I mean, I thrilled to that. Oh, it's better than saving Big John Conley by Everett Bennett Williams, but that's another story. I do have a favorite lawyer, and it's always bad to single people out, but she is my favorite, Sandra Day O'Connor. We were both born in El Paso, Texas. We were both born in the month of March. Different years, but only slightly, let me tell you. But that's not really why I love her as a person. We both went to school at the same school. And we have a picture, which when I introduced her before the New Mexico First organization, my native state is New Mexico, in December, we showed this picture because we both went to a school which was then named Radford School for Girls. Right. And there are 4 rows of girls in descending height till the bottom row, and in the bottom row there's this one little boy in knee pants. That was me. They took little boys in kindergarten, not beyond kindergarten. I guess they thought that we'd soon get on to what a good deal we had if they did that. And in any event, I showed the picture, and she's up there in the 3rd row, and I'm down in the bottom row. So I've liked her ever since. When she was nominated, I said to her, Justice O'Connor, I'm sure they'll confirm you as a justice. I'll expect you to let me know what goes on in conference, give me the inside word, because I have blackmail material on you. All the good Republicans who love Ronald Reagan and hate me, when they see a picture of the two of us together, will look at you with jaundiced eye. Well, I'm not here to tell jokes. And by the way, let me just say a word about the Woodrow Wilson Center. It's a great institution. The full name is Woodrow Wilson International Center for Scholars. Now you say it's another think tank. No. We have some great so-called think tanks in Washington. The Brookings Institution, AEI, go down the whole list of them. I can never remember. Is it SCIS? What is it? SICS? CSIS? I know a lot of guys there. I like them. They lean left or they lean right, and they make no bones about it. We lean center. No matter what your political views, come to the Woodrow Wilson Center for Scholars. We have people there from all stripes. We bring people from overseas, not just to study there, write books there, they get on the bestseller list and win great prizes, but we have visitors. The President of Turkey was recently there. His only speech in the United States he gave at the Wilson Center. And we got a little publicity, unfortunately, last year when our Mideast Division head, Hala Esfandiari, went back to Iran to visit her 93-year-old mother, and they threw her in prison. They thought she was a spy. And she was in the Evan prison, which is a notorious prison in Tehran, for 4 months. They did not brutalize her, but being in a cell, and she was in a cell, and being interrogated to find out what she was about and whether she was there to destabilize the government was heinous enough. They finally let her off. Our president, Lee Hamilton, who was the great member of Congress from Indiana for so many years, began to use every means at his disposal, as did the rest of us, but our means were not anywhere near as important as Lee's. He tried to get it out, and he wrote to the president of Iran, and he wrote to the vice president of Iran and received no answers from them. And finally someone said, you've got to write to the man who really runs Iran, the chief Ayatollah there. And so he wrote to the chief Ayatollah and put it on a religious basis, a humanitarian gesture. And he heard nothing for a few days, and then the Iranian ambassador to the United Nations, with whom Lee had been working, said to him, here is a reply. And the reply was very formal, and all it said was, the Ayatollah Khomeini has received your message, and it will be considered. And Lee says, my face fell, and I said, it will be considered. And the ambassador said, that means that it'll be acted on favorably. He would not say it will be considered to turn it down. And sure enough, in a few days, Hala says they came to her and said, you're leaving. And she thought she was going back to prison because they had released her just barely to her mother's custody. And she said, oh, and she said, yes, the plane leaves tonight. And she said, I have no passport. Here it is. They had stolen it from her, and she got out. I say that's the wrong way. I told her, Hala, you put us on the map, but at what great sacrifice. We're really pleased to be here in Tulsa to honor outstanding citizens of Oklahoma, the governor, of course, and you know them all, Henry Zarrow and Lynn Schusterman, two great philanthropists and people in this community. And we're very happy that they have accepted the Wilson Medal. Now let's talk politics, shall we? I told you I've been wrong. I thought John McCain, who is someone that I'm sure so many people in the room share my view, is a great American hero, had washed out, as the naval aviators would say last June. His campaign had badly been mismanaged. All the money had been spent to no great effect. The war was not going well, and his ace card in the hole is the Iraq War in one sense or another. And he himself was despondent and all of that. So we thought, well, and he was about 2% in the polls, and we pay lots of attention to polls, which are often wrong, in which case we're often wrong, but then we can blame on the polls, right, can't we? So where did he come from? Well, clearly he had a weak field. That was to his great advantage. Mitt Romney never caught on. I mean, I read the Bible backwards and forwards, as a matter of fact, and I know that Saul was on the road to Damascus from Tarsus when he had the epiphany and became St. Paul, changed all his views. Well, Mitt Romney, as you recall, in 2002, ran for governor of Massachusetts on a platform of a woman's right to choose, gay rights, gun control, and he had an epiphany at age 58. I mean, if you're young, I think you can do that. And conservatives rightly never quite wondered whether, if he was elected, he would have another epiphany and go back to be Saul or something like that. Plus the fact that there's something about politicians, something about people, whether they're politicians or not. Do they connect? Do you like these people? Do you trust these people? I can show you in presidential election after presidential election where the winner was not someone whose paper on how to solve the Cyprus problem met the approval of X number of voters or anything else, but someone that you liked, someone that you connected with and thought was one of you and understood your problems. That was Bill Clinton's great advantage. He would walk in a room. I covered him for a while, as you know, and you probably met him, several of you in the room, walk in a room of people who didn't like him. When he left, they might still not vote for him completely, but they'd like him because he really cared about them. And he did. You can't fake it. He really cared about him. And that's one of the big things about it. Mitt Romney he's a nice man, I think, and it's good to his family. It's a good family. But he just never connected. I wondered sometimes when I heard him give a speech, make a mistake. You're too flawless here. Is there such a thing as being too flawless? Yes. I mean, say something awful and say, oops, I said something awful, or go on, or what have you. And others in the field. You see that Mike Huckabee is doing well in the Bible Belt. Hey, I was dipped in the drainage ditch when I'm so old at Baptist church. We didn't have a baptistry, so I know I'm not complaining about the Baptist or Mike Huckabee, but I am saying that outside of the Bible Belt, he has clearly not drawn strength. He's drawing strength now to some extent because conservatives don't like John McCain, some of them. He still gets, in all of our research and our polls so far from the states that have voted, he gets about 31% of the Republican conservative vote. He'll get more, I think, as the primaries go on now, because George W. Bush has endorsed him in the sense of saying he's a true conservative. And which one of you in this room will go against George W. Bush? He's from West Texas. I was born in El Paso. You don't mess with us, kid. We tough guys, and if you don't like something, we stick out our chin and pull back our shoulders. So what do you want to do about it? You don't mess with George W. Bush. But he doesn't get but 19% in the past primaries of the hardcore. And I don't mean any offense toward hardcore conservatives, but I'm just trying to delineate ranges of conservatives. Because they don't trust him. They don't like some of his views. Never mind, he has about an 82% American Conservative Union rating, or that he is a strong pro-life guy, or something else. They don't like the campaign finance reform, because the Republicans always thought that would cost them. Now that the Democrats are in charge and all the smart money goes with the winner, right? There's no ideology on money. It goes where the winner is going to the Democrats. They may rethink their view of McCain-Feingold. Who knows? But they really don't like the immigration stance. Immigration policy is very interesting to me. When I first came to Washington, if that had been the issue, as it was this last year, it would have been solved. I mean, these people over here would have said, send them all back. They broke our laws. They have no right to be here. These people over here would say, yes, they broke our laws, but, hey, I need a clean hotel room tonight. I need the food cooked. I need the food. They are part of our economy. Those people who are not breaking the law and are being good people, let's find a way to keep them. These two would have fought. They would have compromised, and they would have come out with a solution, and we would have gone on. I mean, I watched the great civil rights debate of 1964 from the Senate gallery. I watched Richard Russell, the great senator from Georgia, lead the Southerners in their last attempt to maintain the jury segregation. He'd stand in the center aisle. He'd orate like this, clapping his hands. I never heard anyone call anyone a name, you understand. Today, if we want to argue about the war in Iraq on the floor of the House, you're a coward. You're a murderer. And we start arguing, right? No argument can be done. So this year in immigration, what happened was everyone started with the idea that the status quo is unacceptable. I don't care whether you're over here, whether you're over there. We had to do something. The status quo is unacceptable. But because, unlike the days when I first came to Washington and beyond, no one wants to compromise on both sides. I'm not blaming either side. No one wants to compromise. We will end up with what? The status quo. And then we'll get some more, few million will come in, and it's fine. At some point, I guess we will kind of pull back on this and other issues and say, maybe we ought to get together, make a deal. I make a deal with my wife every year. She wants to go out. I want to stay home. We compromise. We go out, naturally, but if you think about it, everyone in this room makes compromises almost every day of their life. Now, some principles are so important, hey, you go to your death, I suppose, rather than compromise those. But if everything is a no-compromise deal, nothing ever gets done. No business would get done. No land would be swapped. No horses would be traded. No wives would get to go out, because I am still stronger than she is. So that's the political climate we find ourselves in. John McCain, I think, is going to be, I'll be very careful, is going to be the nominee of the Republican Party. His problem will be whether, at the end of the day, conservatives, all of them, rally around. James Dobson, the great leader of Focus on the Family, says he'll stay home. Now, that's a real threat to McCain. George W. Bush was reelected because of the James Dobsons, that is, the hardcore conservatives of this world, in 2004. They not only came out and voted in prodigious numbers, they brought every man jack they could find who would vote for George W. Bush. They hauled him to the polls. In other words, they worked hard. So if Dobson said, well, I'm going to vote for the Democrat, but I'm going to stay home, that's real trouble. And Ann Coulter, poor Ann Coulter, she says she worked for Hillary Clinton before she worked for John McCain. She makes her living being tougher than the tough on the far right. In fact, she wants to fall over the edge. Having most recently disparaged the families of the 9/11 victims, I don't remember her exact words, so I better not quote them, but I mean, it's like taking drugs, you have to top yourself. So now she says she'll vote for Hillary Clinton. and she sells her books. I think if you look at the covers of the books, each book that comes out, she's more skimpily clad. I think she'll be nude on the next cover of the book. I don't think we have to worry about her or people like her. But John McCain is threatened if true, good conservatives who re-elected George W. Bush in Ohio in 2004, the Democrats, who also had a great ground war, they brought out 57,000 more votes in the Cleveland area for their candidate than they had for Al Gore in 2000, for John Kerry. Didn't work because the Republicans in Ohio brought out even more. If they don't do that this time, because all of our data demonstrates that if the Democrats could simply run blank for president, no name, blank would win by a huge margin. Because Senator Obama's right, change! And the Democrats can thank George W. Bush for that more than anything else. I'm not going to, again, disparage Mr. Bush or argue with those of you in the room who still think he's one of the greatest presidents we've ever had, but you are in the distinct minority. And the rest of the people are just mad as hornets at him, and they want change. And if it's McCain, those of you who don't want the other side have got to work for him. And there's an old expression, like it or lump it. Don't lump it, like it. Now let's get to the Democrats. I have maintained all along that Senator Clinton would be the nominee of the Democratic Party. Recently, certain of my muscles have begun to twitch. And I see reality. And what is reality? Well, Barack Obama is, when I say a phenomenon, I've seen him before. Different name, different face, but we are always looking for the non-politician politician, for the guy or gal now who hasn't gotten their hands dirty in swarmy compromises and dealing with people and having to do the nitty-gritty of politics, but who ride on white horses and come in and say, I'm fresh and I'm new and I'm not like these bums and I'm going to save us all in one sense. So we're always looking for that person. Gene McCarthy in the 80s was going to save us from Vietnam, and I can go down the whole list. Most of them Democrats, I agree, because Republicans have a ladder usually, and that you get on that ladder, you just go right to the top. If Dick Cheney didn't have a heart problem and didn't go around shooting best friends with a shotgun, I think he'd be running. So I've seen Barack Obama when he first came on. I didn't pay much attention to him. Seemed like smart, personable, no question about it. Had obviously some problems that he'd have to get over in order to be successful that some others didn't have and haven't had in the past. But so what? As a country, we are getting there if we're not there already. But he's shot up for two reasons. Him and her, right? Him and her. She's polarizing. You don't have to tell a person in this room about Hillary Rodham Clinton. You know her. You either like her or you don't like her. And very few of you say, well, it doesn't matter one way or the other. I mean, you either think she's great or you think she's terrible with another Clinton or what have you. And some of you may even think she's worse than that other Clinton. I mean, that old hound dog had us, so we like reprobates. We like, some of these people who just sort of hunch along. We go tisk, tisk. On the other hand, we love to have a beer with them, sit down with them and all of that. You don't want to have a beer with Senator Clinton. I mean, she's humorless in a way, and she doesn't have her husband's touch and what have you. But the other side is him. I was there when Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. delivered his speech at the Lincoln Memorial. I covered it. It was a hot day. I knew it was very interesting. I didn't realize how great it was. Those things come on you after a while. Not, says him, have I heard someone who, as an orator, with a passion and a cause, can enunciate, eloquently is the word we use for Barack Obama, so well his positions. He is interesting. He is new. He is fresh. He's not swarmy. And he has a message. And his message is change. And some of you say, well, all right, fine. Change to what? Change. It's tomorrow. Yes. What about tomorrow? Where are we going tomorrow? Are we going to Oklahoma City? You want to go to Amarillo? You want to go, to Grinder Schwitz? I'll let you know when I get there, but we're going to get there. Follow me. One of Reagan's great strengths, I thought, was he, too, inspired people. Although you knew where he stood. I mean, he told us, you elect me president, we'll get those dirty commies. And we'll lower your taxes to nothing. I exaggerate, but only for effect. He used to joke, he said, my perfect tax form would have 3 lines. First line, how much did you make? Second line, how much do you have left? Third line, send it in. And And we knew he'd get that welfare queen who was driving around the streets of Chicago in that big Cadillac while she was getting on welfare. We knew he was going to get her off the rolls. And people would say, you know, I think he's going off a cliff here. But everyone else would say, yeah, but he knows where he's going, and they'd march in right behind him. One of the problems with Senator Obama is, like all tsunamis, and I'm not comparing him to the tsunami recently in the Pacific, they recede at some point. They back and fill. Maybe then they come back. In other words, but this first great wave of enthusiasm cannot last. A sine wave engineering suit does not go straight up. Life does not go straight up. You know that. I know that. The most successful people are ones who've had reverses and come back and black and fill. They learn and go on. So this shooting star may shoot all the way to the White House. We have a precious little time left. But one of the things that is in his favor is no one knows much about him other than, use your own phrases, what I've said about him. Oprah helped him win the Iowa caucuses. Not because Oprah said, vote for this guy. Maybe a few people said, I'll vote for whoever Oprah says. But because they came down to see her in prodigious numbers, and she introduced him, you now meet my friend. They hadn't paid much attention to Barack Obama, but they were packing the house to see Oprah, and they then got to see this phenomenon, this shooting star. So she did a world of good. But when you look at it, and I'm not on Senator Clinton's payroll, but when you look at it, she's right. I mean, you have a toothache? If you do, you go to the dentist who's been drilling teeth a long time. I mean, you don't go to, hey, this young guy or gal out of dental school may someday be the greatest dentist in the world, but you go to the old guy who's drilled teeth. Experience does count. As my governor, Bill Richardson, said in one of the debates, is experience a leper? Well, no. Are you going to... Here are the people who run this great institution. I mean, someday, those of you who are young and you're graduating, you may run the great institution, but not tomorrow. Not tomorrow, these guys. But at the moment, we're all caught up, by we, I'm talking about as a country, in Senator Barack's charisma and his aura and what have you. But he has problems. Everyone does. Before I take your questions, just a few. We paw over our exit poll data. Why do people who have voted vote the way they voted? And we see something very interesting. Wherever there are large African-American populations in the Democratic primaries, and that's where they are to be found, he wins. Okay, fine. The more power to him and more power to them. I have not only no complaint, I think that's absolutely understandable. He has a trouble, frankly, with white men. I would have thought that, maybe not so much against Senator Clinton, because some of us old boys from the fork of the creek, we have a choice between voting for Senator Obama and that woman. We might want to vote for that woman, but they are. He has won he's won white men in California, in Iowa, in New Hampshire, but when it comes to the South, with one exception, the white men go for her pretty strongly in the Democratic side. And now we come to Texas. He's going to end this sweep of the weekend and today's sweep of the Chesapeake primaries with far more, by far more, maybe 100 more, not 500 or 1,000 delegates. But she now comes to Texas where the Hispanic American voter on the Democratic side gave her a prodigious majority in California. That's why she won California. And they're in Texas, and unless they have changed their minds in 3 weeks, 3.5 weeks, they're going to carry her through in Texas along with white men in Texas. That's the data so far. Against that, of course, is big momentum. I mean, everyone wants to be with a winner, and he looks like a winner. He may be a winner, and people want to sign on. So against the voting patterns we've seen so far could be this other. Ohio, the next big state, and she's done well in big states. Not just California, and New York, and New Jersey, and Massachusetts. He's done well in caucus states, because she didn't organize. She, knowing that she'd be the nominee of the Democratic Party for most of last year, ran a general election campaign instead of running a primary campaign. She didn't pay attention to her husband's rule. One of Clinton's rules, Bill Clinton, is you got to win the next election, or there will not be an election after that. He tried to apply that, and it backfired on him somewhat, reminding us that, Jesse Jackson won the South Carolina primary twice. As if, wait, he's black? We didn't know Barack Obama was black until Bill Clinton reminded us of that. Thank you, Bill. We knew that. It was unartful of her husband to have to try to remind us of all these things. But Clinton's rule, I think it does apply. You have to win the next one. So in Ohio, the state is hurting economically. Other states are hurting too, but Ohio, an industrial state, is going down the drain before some of the other states. We found in all of our exit polling so far that the number one concern of Democrats and Republicans too is the economy. Number two is Iraq for the Democrats. It's something else for the Republicans. They don't want to talk about the Iraq that much. And the Democrats who vote saying that number one concern is what they voted on have given her a 10-point advantage in each state. And it could happen in Ohio. And Pennsylvania also, an industrial state to a large extent. So the fat lady has not sung yet. I mean no disparagement of Senator Clinton, obviously. That is an expression, you understand. So those of you who are Obama fans and may your tribe increase, wait a moment. You don't have to lay off some of your bet, but don't increase it right now. Just because you'll hear tonight that he's won 3 more primaries, District of Columbia, Maryland, and Virginia, with large African-American populations, District of Columbia particularly. Don't count her out. Now you say, all right, stop talking around the issue. Who will be the Democratic Party nominee? I don't know. I don't know. And who's going to win the election in the fall? It's going to be close. And I know more about who's going to win the election in the fall, frankly, than which one of the two we've been talking about will be the Democratic Party nominee. I know what the criteria is. What's the issue? If we're in a deep recession, Democrats are going to win. John McCain's a war hero. Not more than that. I think he's a great guy. But as he himself said the other day, I don't know much about the economy. And we're going to look to someone that we think can help jobs and pull us out. If, God forbid, we're attacked again, or Iraq has gone up in flames again, and it's foreign policy and that, or if Ahmadinejad rattles his forthcoming nuclear bomb again, then it might go the other way on the issue. I think it'll be a close election. And having said all that, I'll be glad to dodge your questions if you have any. On any subject. Yes, sir.
I have a question about national party conventions. First, I'd like to clarify your reference to that other Clinton was Bill, not Chelsea.
Yes, Bill. I have no complaints about Chelsea and those people who did, beginning with Rush Limbaugh, who said she looked like a dog, remember, several years ago. That's reprehensible.
The conventional wisdom now seems to be that yesterday and today's conventional wisdom is wrong. We don't know what tomorrow's conventional wisdom will be.
It's me.
People are starting to think that both parties' national conventions will be more than just delegate backdrops.
Could be.
How do you foresee what may happen in both late August for Democrats, early September for Republicans?
Well, I think in the Republican, good question. I think in the Republican convention, John McCain, all the things, the creek doesn't rise, health remains good, all of those things, he will be the nominee of the Republican Party. In the Democratic side, I think they will come out, unless she collapses for some reason. If she does do well in Texas and Ohio and Pennsylvania, they'll come out almost even in delegates. And someone will have more popular votes than the other, but not by millions, but by enough for bragging rights. And then the 796 super delegates who were not selected by the voters, but are there to restore the days when the bosses actually had a say in this. They're elected officials, as you know. Some of them running for re-election will decide who's the winner, who can win in November. They'll pay attention to the popular vote more, I think, than the delegate count at the moment, if it's pretty close. And those who are going to run for re-elected in the House of Representatives, they'll look at their own district, too. Who would help me as top of the ticket? Whether they get the presidency or not, I don't care. I want back in. And they'll make the decision. I truly believe at this point, as firmly as I once believed that she would be the nominee of the Democratic Party, that we will have a convention in which the superdelegates, now we may know ahead of time, they may declare themselves before the first day of the convention, but they will make the difference. Yes, sir.
What happens to the Democratic Florida delegates?
Well, Democrats in Florida and Michigan, as you know, saying we want to say in this, we're tired of these two little unrepresentative states having all of this power, jumped ahead against the party rules. So they were stripped of all of their delegates. The Republicans in Florida just stripped them of half the delegates, but the Democrats said, oh. And immediately everybody said, doesn't matter. Whoever the nominee is of the Democratic Party will say, I love Florida, and I love Michigan. I insist we seat these good people, these fine, hard-working Americans. But if, in fact, it comes down to the fact that Senator Clinton has the lion's share of those delegates, her name was on the ballot in Michigan, and everyone's name was on in Florida, and no one campaigned, you think Senator Obama will say, yeah, that's the right thing to do? Wrong, if it makes a difference. And so they have a big fight. Someone says, well, let's have a caucus. That favors Obama. Caucuses, as we've seen it, with one exception. He wins the caucuses. Not only did he organize, but the people who want change, the party regulars, they came out in a snowstorm over the weekend in prodigious numbers to vote for Senator Obama. So she's not going to agree to a caucus idea. She will continue to say, hey, I won them. If you're going to seat them, I want them. They're all mine, or I get the lion's share. I don't know how the Democrats are going to settle it, but they have to settle it before the convention, or it's going to be one big Donnybrook. I was there when Fannie Lee Hamer brought her Mississippi delegation to Atlantic City in 1964. Lyndon Johnson's nomination was assured, but I'm telling you, the screaming and yelling, and I don't mean to trivialize it, there was a real issue there, did the party no good. So they're going to have to try to figure out what to do about Michigan and Florida before we get to the convention. Now, if I'm wrong about the outcome and someone wins enough delegates, 2025, by the end of the Pennsylvania primary to be the nominee, then they seat them. So they seat them for Senator Clinton. If she's got that number, it doesn't matter. If he's got that number, it doesn't matter. It's if no one has that number where it matters. Yes, do you remember? Hello, Pat. Thank you. Are you a super delegate? State? All right, state delegate. Good.
I'm interested on your viewpoint with the wild card, the independent voters. Where do you see skewing the vote?
Well, the independent voters have been for Obama and they've been for McCain. Of course, some of them have been for someone else. But both of those candidates have won primaries in states thanks to the independent voters. They saved them in New Hampshire. The Republican Party voters voted against John McCain. A few so-called moderates, there are 2 or 3 left, I think, in New Hampshire. But the hardcore, and more than when I say hardcore, the Republican Party registered voters voted for Mitt Romney and a couple of others for the mayor and all that, against John McCain, but the independents brought him home. Obama also has benefited from the independents. In Iowa, his big win was independents to a large extent, young kids and independents, because the party faithful in Iowa, even the caucus state, voted for her. They came up and said, I'm not going over the lamp, that new senator from Illinois, I'm going over to the easy chair. They all caucused like that. So I don't know, again, what the issue is going to be in the fall, but I think whatever it is, the independents who are not party faithful, and I guess they look at things across the board. Who do I like? Who do I trust? Who do I think I need a job, will get me the job? Who do I think will make me safer because I feel threatened by these crazies in the Middle East and Pakistan and elsewhere? They'll make up their mind, and they'll probably hold the key. You're smart. They'll probably hold the key to the election. Not, except again, that ground war, that getting out the vote is so, so important. I mean, in 2004, the country said they wanted out of Iraq. I'm talking about the majority. I don't mean a narrow majority. Iraq was wrong. We want out of Iraq. John Kerry didn't take the oath of office. And the reason clearly, all the reasons there are a lot of reasons there, but I'm telling you, I can demonstrate in a mock court, if we're going to have a moot court or something like that, I can demonstrate it was the get out the vote effort on the part, the Karl Rove effort on the part in key states that brought this president to re-election. Yes. Yes. I'll get back to you next if you remember your question.
I would like for you, one of your colleagues, Mr. Will.
I know George F. Will Incorporated. I've known him man and boy all these years.
He seems to play his cards kind of close to the vest. I remember several years ago you asked me a question like, where have you been on vacation? You answered in a withering voice. None of your business. So
It's La Jolla, California. Every year he goes there.
I would like to invite you to take this opportunity to share
About George Will, well, I used to say that George Will is the smartest person I know in the news business and the columnist, and in the commentary business. Until one day, I guess in a group like this, someone said, well, if he's so smart, how come you disagree with him so often? So I don't say that. George's sense of humor is hard to see. He has one, but it is so wry. It is so hidden in the sense that it's hard to see, but it is there. And when we argue, again, we don't call each other names, but in the old days, we don't get to argue that much because he's against the war, he's against tearing up the Bill of Rights. I mean, all of my issues he's adopted in recent years. He's against war, not wiretapping without court orders, all that stuff. When we used to argue, the worst things we'd call each other, I'd say, George, that's just nonsense. And he'd say, well, you liberals always think that way. And we'd go on. But amusing anecdotes, like fun ones, I don't know any. We once gave an Emmy. We presented an Emmy at the awards in Pasadena, you know, the Emmy show. And I said, George, we go out there, we have about 90 seconds, the two of us, and we have to make a little banter back and forth, and we can't just go out. He walked out like this, and I tried to yuck it up a little bit, you know, like I'm yucking it up today, thinking no one likes the person who's boring. You got to somehow energize them. He just kind of stood there. So we presented the Emmy. George walked away, and I waved and left. Now, do you remember your question?
With respect to the Republican Party and John McCain, if he teams up with Huckabee as a VP, you think that...
Well, may I interrupt you? I always interrupt people. What I said was, for him to get elected, the Republican Party and conservatives in the party have to bring out the vote for him. If they don't, yes, I said he's not going to get elected, but I don't know. Maybe they will.
Do you think that Huckabee could change that perspective? I know from the Republican standpoint there is a lot of McCain.
Yeah, there is.
Huckabee could change that, or...
Well, I don't know, because, you know, a lot of conservatives think Huckabee, he raised taxes in Arkansas, and he wanted to actually give the children of illegal aliens some state help. And that just infuriates, you know, some people on the right. So they don't see him as a true down, you know, Tom Coburn, Istuk, you know, Inhofe type Republican. You know, so Pastor Huckabee, again, I say it lovingly, Pastor Huckabee, who again, well, number two, never. Lyndon Johnson brought John Kennedy the presidency. He brought the Texas electoral votes and made John Kennedy president. But since then, I've never seen anyone running as vice president that made any difference whatsoever. I mean, either way, you could try to make the case. Bob Dole talking about Democrat wars, 1970, but that's not why Jerry Ford lost. He lost because he pardoned Richard Nixon. All the data suggests that's the biggest factor in why he lost. And from the standpoint of, you know, a lot of us think, again, I've disclosed my religion, upbringing and all that, a lot of us think an ordained Baptist minister probably cannot get elected President of the United States. But if he's on the ticket, I don't think he detracts that much from the ticket. I don't know whether we're ready for a Jewish American to get elected President of the United States. I think Mike Bloomberg would like to have tested that, but has decided not to do so. But Joe Lieberman on the ticket did not cost Al Gore the election in 2000. Al Gore cost Al Gore the election in 2000. So they like each other. But let me just tell you something. The longer it goes on and the longer Huckabee stays in, the less John McCain is going to like him. There is a man whose name some of you know, James Addison Baker III, who has been all of his adult life the great friend of George Herbert Walker Bush. That's the first President Bush, number 41. And the greatest, he was Secretary of State in that number 41's administration. He served Ronald Reagan loyally and faithfully. But the greatest thing he did for his friend was convince him to get out of the primaries in 1980. George Herbert Walker Bush had won a number of primaries against Ronald Reagan and wanted to stay in. But Baker knew that if he continued to stay in, calling Reagan's economic program voodoo economics, etc., he had no chance to be on the ticket. So he almost hit him on the head to get him out of the race. If Huckabee really wants on the ticket, he'll get out of this race pretty quickly. He can go on. But if he does so at the peril for any further political life this year. Yes. Hi. Well, you know, if you've looked at journalism, whether you've studied it in school or whether you're clearly smart. I mean, you can talk, you can speak the English language and all that. You know the basics. You need to be objective as a reporter. Now, when you're a columnist, or I'm shooting my mouth off here, you can say whatever you want to within the bounds of non-vulgarity, not taking the Lord's name in vain and all of that. You need to be fair. But remember what fairness is. Fairness is not 6 of one and half a dozen pounds of the other. If I hire you to come to work for me, and I say, look, what is your first name? Ashton? Yes. Okay, Ashton. I'm getting a lot of complaints from the people who live across the river that this new plant who's brought so many jobs to our town, it's helping us with economic, is dumping toxic stuff in the river, and it's affecting their children's health. Take a look. Get in there. So, all right, you go talk to the plant manager. He said, well, it's nonsense. Said, look, we have these scrubbers. We had to pay millions of dollars for them. We are well within EPA standards. Here are our own recordings. We are not, I assure you, dumping sludge in the river beyond the standards. You go talk to the people across the river. They say, smell this stuff. Look at my children. I mean, the doctors don't know what something's wrong with them. Okay, you listen to both sides. And then you take samples from the flume, from the plant, and you send that water samples to 3, not 1, not 2, but 3 separate good laboratories. And they all come back and tell you that this plant is dumping sludge in the river far above the EPA standards. Now, what kind of story are you going to write? Well, the plant manager says we're not. Folks across the river say we are. I want to be a fair reporter. No, that's not fairness. That's unfairness to your reader or to your you say they're dumping according to the accepted standards of measurement by these 3 laboratories improper sludge in the river. That's fairness. So be careful when you hear some slogan like fair and balanced. Balance is okay. But fairness is not just saying, well, here's the Democrat, here's the Republican to argue the issues, and now we'll have a round table with the National Review guy, the view from Bill Kristol's Public Enemy. No, that doesn't work. Finally, I want to say something to you as a reporter. Be aggressive. You don't have to be aggressive. In fact, I'd advise you not to be aggressive in the style that is me at an early age, from knee pants in the Radford School for Girls. You can be quiet and you can be respectful, but be aggressive. Bore in. Don't let people talk you out of looking at something. Don't let people say, well, I've answered your question, when in fact they haven't answered the question. And if you sit in the White House press room on the back row with your hand up waiting to be called on, you're never going to be called on. Get up there. Get up there. Make your presence known when you're covering the story. There are lots of other rules I could give you, but that's enough for today. Yes, yes, sir.
We have the same questions, Stephen.
Well, you want to take half, and you take half, and, you know, stereo?
Our Oklahoma Senator Tom Coburn.
I know him.
Has been mentioned as maybe being a vice president. He kind of denied it. Now they're saying no comment. And he just went to Iraq, which is very unlike Tom. Very unlike Tom. We're wondering if he would pacify the conservatives if he did. From a state, we're not much of a state when it comes to.
What do you mean you're not much of a state?
When it comes to power of politics like that. Do you think
You'll never be governor of this state, sir. We've got that on tape. He is a conservative. No question about that. He has an unblemished record, it seems to me. I don't know what his rating is. I think it may be 100% or very near to it by these rating services on all the issues. And they like each other. And I've done interviews with him. I think he's a pretty good guy. I'm not saying I agree with him on all the issues. But here's the thing. What does McCain need? At the moment, he needs a George W. Bush out there saying he's a true conservative. And if he's the nominee, I'll work for him. He needs people who will convince conservatives that suspect him and don't like him that they ought to get on board for the good of the party and for the good of the 90% of what they think is important. But what will he need in a general election? Well, someone asked a very good question. He needs to continue to be able to reach out to the moderates and the uncommitted people. He needs to reach out to the people who have made the difference, as I say, for both Obama and McCain so far. And would Tom Coburn, a very strong conservative, be the guy? I think they might say, we need someone that has more of an image that would be compatible with saying to the independents, I'm still your guy. I'm still the guy, and my running mate is one of you in that sense, too. And also, if it's a recession we're in, he needs someone, Mitt Romney, perish the thought maybe, but he needs someone with credentials to say, I can help what I hope will be our next president get jobs and solve this crisis and corner Wall Street, make him give back some of the money. And he needs someone like that.
Well, I'm one of those conservatives that they're talking about, and I'm wanting to see someone that's actually done something. They talk about John McCain. He talks and talks. Everybody says he's conservative and everything. I'm still not. And I'm wanting someone that's already done something.
Well, I suspect, I'm not going to argue with you, but I suspect you're not convinced because on some of the issues that are very important to you, that you use, and there's nothing wrong with this, as litmus tests, he doesn't measure up. And you are not giving that much weight to all the other issues where he would measure up in your book. And that's not only your right. People like say, oh, it's your right. Hey, I think it's a good way to look at it. I mean, you'll make up your mind on a basis. And if a Tom Coburn on the ticket would tend to reassure you, and McCain thinks that it's people like you, not only to vote for him, but to work for him, then Coburn has a good chance.
Yeah, I'll vote for him.
But you got to work. You got to bring out the neighbors. You got to bring out the people. Yeah, you got to energize it for him. You got to really believe. And well, see, that won't do it. That won't elect him, I don't think.
I think we have time for 2 more questions.
Make him mean, make him tough, and I'll dodge him. Oh, heck.
Throughout your career, you've been known as very acute when asking questions of various.
Did he say cute? At my age, I'm good. No, I know.
What questions do you feel should be answered or not? Questions should be asked that aren't being asked.
You know, that's a good question, but I've been watching presidential press conferences, even though I'm not there any longer. And although I'm not on the trail, I watch the debates. I've missed 2 or 3 of them, but there have been 500. And I think the questions have been asked. The problem is the answers have not been given. Here's a journalist would be back there. We can ask questions that are just right. And the best question is one that's one subject. Don't ask someone, what about A, what about B, what about C, because they'll answer D, One subject. Make it pointed, not rude, but don't be all over the lot. Don't apologize for asking, sir, I know you have a lonely office and all of this, and you care about the troops and so deeply and all that, but tell us, why didn't you put some body armor back there? Do you just ask the question? They've been asked, but for various reasons, we don't get a lot of answers. The makeup of the way the debates had been until recently, with 19 people on each stage, no chance to ask a question and bore in when you get a flim-flam answer, and then you get a second flim-flam answer, and finally they say, yes. I mean, what got Senator Clinton in trouble? It wasn't just that. That was the catalyst that suddenly everyone got up and said, she's running a general election campaign, trying to take all sides of an issue, trying to run down, was that driver's license thing? Because she herself answered the question in a flim-flam way. Look at the transcript. She could have got away with it. And then she came back later and said, well, I want you to understand now, I'm not personally for this. I just want to say that I work with Governor. And all of a sudden people say, wait a moment, are you or aren't you? So it's not that the questions haven't been asked, in my view. It is they haven't been answered. Yes, sir. My health's good. I mean, can you not see? I think the gentleman referring in 1995, I joined the Cancer Club. Now, the Cancer Club is not an exclusive club. There are about 10 million of us in the United States that are members. And it is not a club that you send in your application and you wait to see if you've been accepted. You are drafted. You suddenly, I'm in the melanoma division. You find yourself in the club. And then you try to do what you can. And I've been very fortunate. I had one melanoma tumor in my right groin, one lymph node that was a melanoma. And that was in 1995, and I haven't seen it since. But as I'm sure, I'm not going to ask for a show of hands, but I'll bet more than half the room is either personally members of the Cancer Club or members of their families or members of the Cancer Club or members of their families or good friends are no longer alive because of this dread disease. Norman Schwarzkopf, another one of the people that I think is heroic, the first Gulf War, says, and he's a member, his division is prostate division. He says, if I had called up at the end of the war to President Bush and said, Mr. President, I have very bad news. I've lost every one of the 545,000 troopers in my command. He said they wouldn't have waited to court-martial me. I would have been strung up before sunset. We lose 565,000 Americans every year to cancer. And we say, well, we can't do anything. Oh, yes, we can. I listened to all those debates, as I've told you. I heard them both sides of the aisle. We can't kill this problem by throwing money at it. Oh, yes, you can when it comes to dread diseases like cancer and muscular dystrophy and Alzheimer's and multiple sclerosis and all of the rest. If we will fund the National Institutes of Health and other such organizations that support peer-reviewed grants, the guy comes, a scientist says, look, I've tested the rats here, and I think we may have something, but we need the money for a national trial to find out. Well, no, we don't have the money. We have it for Iraq. We have it for health care. We have it for some other things. That's ridiculous. That is just, if you think about it, we're all supposed to, I think, therefore I am, one of the great phrases. Well, wow, what are we thinking of? That we don't have the money in this nation? Now, it might not work on us, but until we test it, how do we know? We can speed up. I think our scientists are on the verge, and I'm not a scientist. I pay attention more to melanoma, number one, you know. We're on the verge of these great breakthroughs when it comes to cancer and other diseases. On the verge, not, hey, there's the hill, it's a high one, but we're making progress. We're on the verge. We can speed it up. If we save a few thousand, a few tens of thousands, a few million lives by throwing a little more money at it, I think that's worth it. I really do. So wherever I go, you struck a nerve, sir. I'm sorry to get on my soapbox here. But it's something we can all do. It's something that we can tell our neighbors do, you know. I love the women who go for the March for the Cure, for the Susan G. Komen March. I mean, breast cancer and all of that. They mobilize, and other groups mobilize. But I say let's fund all of these dread disease apparatuses. Let's make it so someday your granddaughter, maybe even your daughter, says, Mother, you know, what is this? What is this apparatus? Oh, that's called the chemotherapy stuff, but it's over there with those iron lungs rusting in that warehouse. We don't need it anymore. That will be a wonderful day, and I think it's going to come. I think we're going to cure cancer. I'm associated also. See, they call me president of the Wilson Council. I think they call me chair of the H. Lee Moffitt Cancer Care Center in Tampa, Florida, for that advisory board. And I love their attitude. They don't say we're going to manage cancer. We're going to manage this, you know, we'll make it easier to live. And no, they're going to cure the disease. And if James Longstreet had believed in Lee's plan, he thought it was going to fail. He thought on the third day at Gettysburg, could not take. He said, General, we cannot, I don't care, there's not enough 15,000 men ever born can take that grove of trees out there. I'll say this to those of you who are going to be leaders. Longstreet, I think, was a great general. But you find someone, if you have a plan, who believes in your plan, not someone who says, look, but I will do my best, even though I disagree with it, to execute it. Get rid of that person. They may try to do their best, but that won't be good enough. So I love the people at the Moffitt. I'll finish with the story. I know you're ready to go. I'm ready to go. The reason I'm associated with Moffitt is because of a guy named Connie Mack. When my diagnosis was made, got in the newspaper. In the morning was the newspaper. My assistant said, Senator Mack is on the phone. Well, I knew him. I'd met him. I had never covered him. I didn't know him well. He was not a social friend. Yes, Senator. I said, Sam, I just read that you've been diagnosed with melanoma. I said, yes, I have. He said, I just want to tell you, 6 years ago, I had melanoma lesions all over my body, and they took them off, and here I am, and I'm fine, and you're going to be just fine, too. Well, I'll follow Connie Mack to the gates of hell. I don't know how to go through. That call did more for my spirits. And I say to people in the club, if you read about, not just a friend, but someone who has something that you have and that you're doing okay with, call them up. Tell them, brother, here I am. You're going to make it, too. You will lift their spirits. And to the extent that positive thinking, where is Dr. Norman Vincent Peale when we need him? A name that maybe you remember and I remember, but few do. It may make a difference. Thank you very much. I've enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you.
I got something
Yeah,
here?
you do got
Oh,
something.
boy. I accept.
Well, thank you, everyone, for coming, and thank you, Mr. Donaldson. Your words just exemplify so much what the school is really all about. Excellence.
You teach them to ramble, do you?
Yeah, no. I wish they all could speak like you. Really, excellence in your career, in your reporting, in your insights, and then, but also the last question, which prompted your words, really decency, sort of the human aspect of it all. And so, just thank you. This was an incredibly invigorating and fun way to spend an hour. So, before we conclude, I'd like to take a moment to present you with a token of appreciation. This actually comes indirectly from our president, Stedman Upham. He regrets that he was unable to attend, and like to present you with a copy of his most recent book, The Many Faces of Edward Sheriff Curtis.
Thank you, and I tell the president that I appreciate very much, and he did the right thing to go to the Board of Regents, is it?
Board of Trustees, yes.
Board of Trustees. When the boss calls, go.
Yeah.